first of all, I need to correct something that I said earlier, that I was surprised that I was Marge's first sort of official client. I'm totally not surprised. I mean, look at her. Of course I mean, what she can do with her little finger, just, you know, sings, wraps us all around in circles. But are y'all's heads about to just explode with all that you have seen and heard? Stand up a minute and just shake it off. Just a second. Oh, I'm just so excited and energized and just wish I could have a conversation with every single one of you. It's just so fabulous to be here. Okay, sit in. It's just wonderful. How many of you actually read House Beautiful magazine or familiar with it? A couple. So this book began as a column in House Beautiful, and it was about 6 years ago. So a lot's changed since then, but the story remains. And no one is more surprised than I by the response to this little book, which is now actually in its 6th printing. So I know it's crazy. It's crazy. Anyway, it was just supposed to be a nice little book about decorating, which I hope it is. But it reluctantly, on my part, became also a personal story about authenticity and about hearing your heart song. And just about everything I'm going to say today has been said in one way or another by all of you, and that is kind of really interesting and awesome. And I think I'll just sit down and just show you the pictures, because it's sort of, but anyway, but it's true, and there's something very affirming about that, and this book certainly would not have come out the way it did, and I probably wouldn't be standing here right now if it weren't for Marge and our work together. And so being here is very special to me, and I see it as a responsibility, I see it as an honor, I also see it as a blessing and as an absolute joy. It is like coming full circle. So, The Bee Cottage Story, a decorative memoir, or, as you know, how I made a muddle of things and decorated my way back to happiness, which I will explain. That is, of course, a little tongue-in-cheek, but a little not. You'd think a reasonably intelligent, fundamentally stable person would have gotten the message by her 30s about, you know, to thine own self be true. I mean, it's pretty basic. And certainly by her 40s. And definitely by her 50s. You'd think. But in my case, in a winding road of life and time and loss and just plain old cluelessness, I found myself at 50 in a complete muddle, having made a major investment in a house that was a wreck, and a major investment in a relationship that was a wreck, and a major career move that was a wreck. But if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have met Marge, so that was good. See, you never know. Silver lining, silver lining. Anyway, you wouldn't have known it to look at me necessarily or talk to me, but that's where I was. And I got there by trying to be who I thought I should be instead of who I was. So how I got there and how I eventually got to a better place is part of the Bee Cottage story. And in the interest of a little visual and contextual relief, the other part is decorating and pretty pictures, which we're going to see, and doing what I love, and how that is part of my healing and growing and getting to my truth. And this is what doing what you love will do for you. And if we haven't gotten anything out of this day to day, it is that, isn't it? And finding your purpose and living your best life is what comes of that. So if you follow the column in House Beautiful, which exactly like one of you may have done, anyway, a few years ago, the story of Bee Cottage begins with heartbreak. I had bought the house in Long Island with my then fiance. It was where we were going to begin our newly married lives together. The house was old and needed work, but I relished the prospect. I couldn't wait. If only I had been as optimistic about the marriage. With the invitations mailed, the dresses fitted, the deposits paid, everybody's plans made, I called it off. Broke the engagement, canceled the wedding. I wish I could say he was a jerk and a cad, like some were. But he wasn't. He was a good guy. We just were not a match. And this is what happens when you to thine own self be false. They say the truth will set you free. But honey, it sure can wring your ass out first. So there I was with this house and the dawning that everything I had dreamed it would now be something else entirely. And so the question became, how do I get the house and my life back together again at the same time? I hoped I would find love again, and when I did, I wanted to give it a good home. So the house was old and in an estate, pretty run down. That made two of us. This was once a garage, a veritable ballroom compared to the rest of the house, with ceilings that soared clear up to 8.5 feet. The dining room, but I liked that little niche, thought that was kind of fun. It had its pockets of charm. And funny, a few days ago I gave a lecture in Baltimore, and I said, oh, it had a little charm about it. And this elderly woman sitting right in the front said, yes, it does. It does. But the kitchen, oh, Lordy. Look at that vintage Kenmore range. That is now in the Smithsonian Museum. This is probably the original kitchen, which we now call the butler's pantry, minus the butler, alas. But it had since become a kind of Airset's laundry room. And upstairs, I can stand flat-footed on the floor and touch the ceiling. I'm 5'10", but still. And look at those walls. I mean, talk about the exquisiteness of imperfection. It's the inevitability of imperfection when it comes to this house. There's pretty much not one element of symmetry in the whole place, if you see what I mean. And here at the end of this little corridor with the built-in drawers there is the third bedroom, which is not big enough to swing a cat in. But at least it's got a radiator right in the middle, right? That's just great. Bathroom's bigger than the bedroom, almost. Outside, well, potential. And here is the kitchen door on the left, and then on the right is the arborvitae that ate East Hampton. If you were wondering what happened to it, the view looking east, and a tree that had seen better days, and I knew how it felt. And, you know, in retrospect, does anybody reach the age of 50 without some sort of catalyst that illuminates a space between where you are and where you thought you'd be? You ain't there yet, but some of you are. Sometimes an illness or a loss jabs you with the awareness of what you haven't done, where you haven't been, who you haven't become. But for many of us, it isn't as, momentous as a single event. It's more a culmination of experiences that turn out differently from how we expected, in a sort of climax of existential mission creep. So in this place of regret and self-recrimination and I paused and took stock. And in the 5 years prior, I had been blindsided by a cruel breakup with a lover, followed by breast cancer with all the glamour and fun of being a swinging single bald girl in New York City. Love those wigs. Followed by my mother dying, my father dying, my beloved uncle dying, and then staying in a relationship where I didn't belong, and leaving work I loved for work I loathed because it paid well, followed by the fairly public humiliation of canceling a wedding at the 11th hour, not the least part of which entailed hurting someone I cared about very much. So I was in a hole, and I just kept digging, boy. And I thought, at this rate, I'm going to end up in China. And I don't speak a word of Chinese. So I thought, I better stop. And so right there, right where I was, away from the honking hustle of New York, I began to see that maybe this could be a house where I could recover. I could be creative, I could be outdoors, I could be social, I could be alone, I could be rested, I could be me, I could just be. And that's how I got the name Bee Cottage. And I like to play on words. I also like bees, which after all are focused and hardworking. They love flowers, they're drawn to beauty, they have a queen. I like all that. So I tell myself, just be there, honey, just be. And my desire to create a beautiful, harmonious environment was a place of clarity for me in an emotional morass. It was a point of light in a big dark room, but it was something. In many ways, this is the story of a decorating project with its inevitable ups and downs. But what surprised me was how the process became a metaphor for self-discovery and clarity, and how inherent in my love for decorating, in Alicia's love for photography, in your love for building, all of these analogies, they all apply, and how those metaphors are insights also into our spirits and our truths. And this is true for everyone, regardless of your calling or your liking. Sport, art, reading, science, teaching, tiddlywinks, doesn't matter. Every calling is rife with these metaphors and what is true for you and what is authentic for you. So, in there are the notes to your heart song and your happiness. My passions are houses and gardens and painting and entertaining, but what makes my heart sing is being here with you today. And I'm not sure I completely, fully understood that until yesterday morning when I was finishing this. And the hope that one of you or more just might be inspired, enlightened, encouraged, amused by even one little thing I say, and we're all up to here with inspiration from this wonderful day, but that might make a positive difference in your life. And then you go out and make a positive difference in the lives of others, and that's how the world changes. That's how it happens, and we all know that. So whether you're beginning a new life chapter or a new design project, and it's funny how they often go together. The hardest part can just be taking the first step. You got to start somewhere, but where is that? And the answer is you start from where you are, right? Like taking a test or doing a puzzle, you figure out the easy bits first, and then sometimes the hard ones are easier to answer later, or they answer themselves. In crosswords, sometimes they just fill in. So it's possible with redoing a house and perhaps with mending a heart. Start with what you know. So here's what I knew about this house. As a real estate agent kept saying, well, it is what it is. And that's a little 1920s stucco cottage that had suffered neglect but not abuse. It had good jaws, a cheerful and cozy spirit, and so my first decision was to preserve that. We're not going to knock out ceilings or walls or change the floor plan. We're going to work with what's here and find a way for it to work with us. And I felt the same way about myself. I wasn't going to turn into, Hillary Clinton or Christy Brinkley, or I was kind of have to work with what I was and see if I couldn't find the best version of that. Work in progress. And sometimes we need a little help. And this is one thing I haven't heard much of today, but why won't some of us ask for it? Or accept it when it's offered? Oh, no, thank you, I've got it. No, I can do this myself. That sound like anybody you know? Anybody you're sitting next to? I had a vision for the house. It was pretty straightforward. I was just going to do it myself. It was just going to take a while, but that was okay. I wasn't going to use a designer. But around this time, a designer friend of mine started coming around. He just walked around. He made suggestions, and you could do this and you could do that. And I thought, wow, he has such great ideas, and they're so sensible. Why don't I ask him to help me? Not full-on design the house, but, help me find a fabric for this. Find me somebody to upholster that. And, do you know someone who could build a shelf here? And so this casual friendship evolved into a working relationship, and it was a lifesaver. And the sense of relief I felt knowing I didn't have to face it all by myself, that everything does not have to be a struggle. It's okay to ask for help. Every surrender is not a defeat. Every surrender is not a defeat. Sometimes it signals a victory of something more important. And I look out at this room full of people who give to their families, their friends, their schools, the carpool, any number of volunteer committees and communities, and I wonder if you're all as kind and generous to yourselves. And if you're not, you get that pink notebook out and you write that down. Think what lightening a burden here then gives you the time and energy to do out there. And as has been said, there's a reason they tell you on airplanes to put your own oxygen mask on first. It's hard to be helpful when you're suffocating. Just saying. So, In almost any process that is at first daunting, it takes only one little thing to get you started, a phrase, an object, an idea that sparks you. And with Bee Cottage, it was these plates. Robin's egg blue, spattered like robin's eggs, painted with feathers. I bought them a year or two before that and always wanted to do a room around them. So they were the start of my color scheme. The rest of it was from what was around me. The sky, the sea, the grass, the trees, the beach. Pretty simple, not original, but you know, we don't always have to be clever. It's excruciating. There's our blue, and another reason for the color scheme was it had to go with what I already had. And that was a lot of green and white slipcovers. So that worked, and there are a lot of disparate elements in this room, and I should say that and show you this because it's proof that not only all greens go together, but if you collect only what you love, all that goes together too, because it all aligns. And if you do in life what you love, again, it all goes together because it aligns with your soul and your spirit and your true self. Here's the fireplace across from the sofa, and these, I just showed this because these two chairs I bought from Katharine Hepburn's estate. Fenwick, right? It's in Old Saybrook. Is that right here, a little piece of Connecticut, right here in Bee Cottage. And then they were in such tatters, you know, she was famously thrifty. And I did finally have to recover them. And then I moved things around and resurrected this pair of chairs that were my mother's. And these funny, see that enormous bronze? There's a pair of those fireplace cheniers. And I mean, they look ridiculous there, but and they're in drastically reduced circumstances compared to the Newport Mansion or whatever it was they came from. But I made them into lamps, so they still look ridiculous, but at least they serve a purpose. And then I finally did recover the banquette, and here's the niche you saw earlier. I had also inherited part of my mother's Staffordshire porcelain collection, so we put those narrow shelves up at the foot of the stairs to hold part of it and another part of it in this small vestibule space between rooms downstairs. And I thought, you know, why not use that leftover green paint? But it's also to say, these innocuous little pockets of space that we have in our houses or apartments can be made into something really kind of interesting and fun with just a splash of color. And all of a sudden it's sort of a visual exclamation point. So you get a little lift on your way to the basement to put the laundry in, right? Here again is our charming garage, former garage, and as it was shot by House Beautiful, which evolved into this. Oh, can you all see all right? Okay, feel free to move around if you can. And today this with curtains, and the chairs you may recognize have migrated in from the living room, and it's all about layers. Layers of furnishings and objects, but also layers of life and living. And that's something we can bring to all of our spaces. All of us, regardless of our age or our income, we should encourage our rooms and our environments to evolve as we evolve, reflecting who we are and what our lives are about, surrounding ourselves with what brings us joy, with what sparks joy. Have you read Marie Kondo's book, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up? Keep what sparks joy. If that means 40 pairs of shoes, that's fine. Or more. Or whether it means finally throwing out that hideous old sofa, but that's still perfectly good, but it's hideous. Get rid of it. Or finally getting around to restoring your grandmother's dresser, or simply rearranging your pictures or redoing your bulletin board. All of these things that inspire you and make you smile. And why would you do anything else? Why, for that matter, would you surround yourself with anything or anyone that didn't inspire you? And that thing has been touched on today. Don't compromise your long-term integrity and fulfillment with short-term excuses in your living room or anywhere else. The dining room as it was, and today. And I have a fascination with pressed plants and botanicals, and they're just there from floor to ceiling. I also love old bird cages and birdhouses. I don't know why. I never wanted a caged bird, but I had toted this bird cage around for years, not knowing what to do with it, but it sparked joy. So finally I painted it white and hung it up there, and it makes this beautiful pattern on the ceiling when it's lit, which is a surprise. And that big mirror you see on the wall plays with the scale of the small room, and it makes it appear bigger by creating the illusion of a space that you walk into beyond it. And there's our niche, again, with glass shelves in it and painted in our blue. It's kind of random in this room, but used throughout the house. It's sort of a unifying element. There it is, close up. And it was lit from above, so we put glass shelves in there so the light would come all the way down. I learned, when I probably should have figured it out at the beginning, that the wooden shelves don't let the light flow through. I know. It's not my specialty, physics. Also, I put this is set for a dinner party, but I put the table off center. It's pretty much of a square room, but I moved it off center anyway because it makes it a little easier to navigate around, makes it look a little bigger. And instead of rewiring where the chandelier was, I just put a hook over the table so I can hang it over the table when it's off center and then hang it back just unhook it and hang it back in the middle of the room when we move the table. So that's handy. And there's our beautiful kitchen again. And now, it's not very big. It's a galley kitchen, but it's efficient. And the floor actually looks like wood, but it's ceramic tile and heated from beneath. That's something people in New England know about. They don't know about that in North Carolina. And I did not put upper cabinets at this end of the room because I felt it closed in an already narrow space. But also, it makes the kitchen look a little less kitchen-y and more like a room. And it's nice, I think, to do that because that's where we spend so much time. Key's going, oh yes, I wouldn't have put the upper cabinets either. No. Now we're back to our lovely butler's pantry, and I had the hardest time figuring out what needed to be done with this space. It needed to be of a piece with the kitchen, but it had to serve many functions, and one had to complement the other, and I just couldn't figure out what they were, and I couldn't do the kitchen either until I figured out that, and so they loved me at the corner deli, because it was about 6 months after I moved in that I finally figured it out, but it was so frustrating in the meantime, and the thing about beating your head against the wall is that it feels really good when you stop. Just leave it. Work on a problem you can solve and come back to this later. Just let it be. So I did, and 6 months later, it did come to me, and it was such a simple solution when it did. And there was a lesson in that, because we're not wired in this culture, are we, to just let things be. There's always a pressure to make it work, make it happen, decide, do something. And certainly there are times when you need to do that, like if your pants are on fire. But sometimes the pressure is invented and self-imposed, and if you just give yourself, your conscious mind, a little rest, it's still whirring away in the background, and one day you're just bopping along, working in the garden or whatever, and it comes to you, right? So trust that process. Trust that. Sometimes if you can't make a decision, that is the decision for the time being. And I realized that was as applicable to life as it was to the butler's pantry. And part of that is about listening to your intuition and trusting your instincts. And as I look back on the wrong turns I'd taken, I realized it was about ignoring my intuition, not listening to my heart, and letting my ego think it knew better than my heart what was right and true for me. And you do this back and forth with yourself long enough, and pretty soon you don't know the difference between your head and your heart. And you can't hear that small, still voice that is never wrong, is it, Marilyn? And you find yourself way farther up the creek than you would have if you listened to your heart in the first place. Can I get an amen? Mm-hmm. So, back to the butler's pantry. And we were able to keep some of the charming old cabinets. I kept the original light fixtures and just painted the bases a different color. And here on the left-hand side, I have storage for china and linens and a little wine fridge there. And the right hand is a work area with cookbooks and a little desk and a cabinet for the printer and file drawers and the whole enchilada. It functions very well. It's also a major thoroughfare. So again, why not experience a little frisson of color on the way to the refrigerator? So I painted that ceiling a bright, shiny, crazy turquoise. And there are people, you can't believe how snarky some people are on Amazon reviews. I mean, like, it's old lady. The house is old. It is not. What old lady would paint her ceiling bright turquoise? Not old lady. The source of which, again, leftover paint. is coming up. There's our dingy little hallway again, but look at that blue, see, shimmering in the distance. It's a bit more enticing. And we painted those built-in drawers there, dark, shiny, brown, look more like a piece of furniture and less like a built-in, which I thought was a great idea that my designer friend came up with. So this little tiny room, I decided to think of it as if it were on a boat, because it's small for a house, but it's big for a boat, right? Perspective is everything. And I even painted the walls, the ceiling, everything like the ocean in that deep, watery blue. And the walls are so bumpy and uneven, I thought, well, they look like waves. And it's counterintuitive, but painting a small space in a dark color can actually make it appear larger because the shadows don't show as much. So the walls seem to, the nooks and crannies and the walls sort of seem to recede and give it a feeling of spaciousness. Kept the windows very simple, shades and nothing else. And I remember a while ago in Veranda there was a story about a Texas, big ranch house in Texas, and the woman had a big dorm-like bedroom where the grandchildren would stay when they came. And she said, I didn't put any curtains in that room because I want everybody to get up. I've got some guests I don't want to get up. I just want them to stay in there, so I might change that. I left the old-timey bathrooms the way they were for budget fatigue, because of budget fatigue as much as anything else, but I just painted it to look like a beach cabana using the same blue. And this is the room where I discovered magic sliders. Those little silicone discs you put on the furniture that move everything as if on wheels, like they say on TV, and boy, do they work. They change your life. Anyway, it took a lot of pushing things around to come up with this room that has so much furniture in it you just can't even believe. I mean, 2 etagères, 3 lamps, a day bed, a desk, 2 desk chairs. It's crazy, but it works. And it's a spare bedroom, but it's also my writing room. So there's my desk, which is just an old breakfast table covered in burlap. And I mentioned before about playing with scale, and I know this mirror looks like it belongs in Downton Abbey. But it does expand the space with its scale, and by virtue of being a mirror, and it reflects the window opposite, so it almost creates the illusion of another window, which is nice. And the master bedroom with its wonky ceiling, which now defines the contour of a half canopy and kind of makes the wonky ceiling disappear. This little alcove here was probably originally a fireplace because it corresponds directly to the one beneath it, but it had since been made into a dressing table. And one of my favorite things is this silly little collage I just made, messing around, cutting pictures out of an old calendar and just stuck them with Scotch tape under the glass. And, you know, putting glass on any surface not only protects the surface, but it also gives it a kind of a finished look, and it also gives you an opportunity to put mementos and sweet postcards and photographs and love letters and thank you notes and sweet things underneath, and you can change it around. Small shelves in strategic places are very handy. And as you can see from these little paintings I collect, I love landscapes and I also love gardens. And from the beginning, Bee Cottage was very much about having a garden. After years of living in New York, that I really wanted a garden. It was a major priority. And the lot at 1/3 of an acre was big enough for something wonderful but manageable. And here, that same view, the poor arborvitae had to bite the dust. And this pergola is really the only structural thing we made, but it's a wonderful place from which to enjoy the garden. And this is the West End, and this same view now. In summer, and in full-on summer, I know it's a real show-off shot, but when the garden looks like this, is for about 5 minutes, you know. Each summer I walk out in the morning in my prettiest bathrobe and pretend I'm Caroline Rome or somebody. And the pergola, which is covered in chapter 25, spans the width of the back of the house and virtually doubles the living space of the house. And if you can barely see up in the beams and the rafters there are built-in outdoor heaters, which my then sweet new boyfriend, who I meet on the blind date in chapter 12, gave to me as a gift. And they allow us to be out there 6 months out of the year. And there's an awning that goes up in April and comes down in November. And that works very well. At the side there's a grapevine covered arbor and 3 raised beds, mostly for herbs that get completely wild by August. And it's a nice place to have a little dinner. Although the topiaries in the swing at the end have been replaced by this armillary and these 2 Japanese maples. And we cut the bottoms out of those containers so we could plant the trees directly into the ground. Armillaries are another thing I love. And another table. And I've gotten to one of my favorite first courses to serve when I'm entertaining is soup in coffee cups. And I so love these beautiful coffee cups today. That was such a lovely touch. It's just lovely. But we drink out of mugs today, don't we? And these coffee cups are so gorgeous. So here's a way to use them if you've got some hanging around from when you were married or something. You know, those wedding presents that are gathering a little dust. And I sometimes set up a buffet right outside the kitchen door there. And here is under the pergola before a party, which, thanks to the awning above it, can happen rain or shine. You just put on a brave smile and a really sexy outfit. Yes, sir. The table that nobody sat around that night, but you know, sometimes those are the most fun. And it's always fun to turn on that crazy fountain. I don't know what I was smoking when I thought about that fountain. But anyway, it just cracks me up every time. This is the medium setting. Honey, those things go on up to at the Bellagio in Las Vegas. And speaking of Las Vegas, maybe this is a good time to tell you I did marry the fella I had the blind date with in chapter 12. Not entirely because of the poor cheaters, but it didn't hurt. Let's hear it for the bride from AARP. Which brings us to the epilogue, which I reread for the first time in a long time. And if you read nothing else in the book, because most people just look at the pictures, I know that. But read the first chapter and the epilogue. They say when a door closes, a window opens. What they don't tell you is that the view may not quite be what you expected. And I now live half the year on a ranch in the high desert of Southern California, which is about as far away from East Hampton as you can get without a passport. And my new husband doesn't care a thing about the beach, the ocean, East Hampton, or Bee Cottage. But he appreciates what I've created there, and he gets that I need time to be there. I did have one lady write in and say, now, I don't think you should have married him if he doesn't like that house, and or either that or he got too big for his britches. I don't know. Anyway, I said, that's his favorite. He framed it and hung it on his wall. Oh, but it's one of life's greatest reliefs, right up there with the ending of the speech or the ending of your child's school play, to realize that no one person or relationship can fulfill all your needs. Just like no one person, place, thing, or house will make you happy. As if happiness were an egg that hatches when you find the right nest. But the right nest is important. As shelter for body and spirit, our homes protect and separate us from the world. But they can also prepare and inspire us to be in the world. The home, whether cottage or castle, stands for who we are, how we live, and how we love ourselves and others. And my wish for you today is to find a home, make a home that you can be yourself in. But most of all, to find the self that you can be at home in. Thank you.